Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to Times LitFest 2021. My name is Kulpreet. Welcome to my fellow panelists. How are you doing this morning?
Very fine, very fine.
Okay.
Great, it's good to be here.
Really wish we could do this in person, but this is the next best thing. So,
yeah, I agree. I believe all of us have attended so many LitFests, and it's absolutely different and much better to do it live. But this is the next best thing, and we have to adapt as the circumstances force us to. So I've got three accomplished writers with me here, and I'm very excited to ask questions for our audience. I'm going to start with Mr. Dahl. Mr. Dahl, my first question to you is, as a writer, what kind of pressure have you faced because of your famous surname?
Not much, actually, because, you know, in my country, Dahl is a very common name. And I think Roald Dahl was half or quarter Norwegian, I think. And he's, even though I've read some of his short stories in crime fiction, I think he mostly wrote for children, so we are in different genres. So it's not much pressure now.
All right, so you've written mostly for adults, and you've written thrillers, and you've been writing from 1993, and it's incredible because many of your books have also been translated into so many languages, and you've written screenplay, etc. But have you ever tried, or thought at least, because of your surname, to write for children, Mr. Dahl, ever?
I have written one book, and it was not a very good success. It was about computers, and I think it was a very technical book, so the children didn't like it much.
Okay. Claire, I want to come to you now, and I want to ask you, you've been to India before, once for Times LitFest, or any more trips?
Yes, no more trips. I had an amazing trip to Kolkata and to Delhi a couple of years ago for the LitFest, and very much hope that you'll let me come back. Okay, great.
You know, your new book has come out, I believe, in June. Is that right? The Hostage, or Only Hostage? And I was reading the reviews of this book, and I'm yet to read it, but read to read the entire book. But it's absolutely amazing. I want to ask you. You know, you were a police officer for 12 years till 2011. Can you tell us how that has helped you to write thrillers, or it has not helped, or what is that experience in as far as the writing goes?
It's definitely helped me. I think a lot of people assume that it helps because I write about real life crimes, but actually real life crimes are generally pretty boring, and real life criminals are often very stupid and not the masterminds that we read about in thrillers. But the way that it helps me is the opportunity I had to observe people from all walks of life, to understand how thin that line is between a life that's very safe and where you make good choices, and a life where things are very difficult. And actually, we all have the potential to cross over from bad to good and from good to bad. And it's that grey area that I think is such rich territory for any writer, but particularly a crime writer.
Mm-hmm. But when you left your job, the police service, at that time, did you know that you're going to have this kind of success in your writing career, or why did you leave the police service?
No, I didn't know at all. I'm a writer or a police officer, not a clairvoyant. I left because I was being a very bad mother. Ultimately, I was working very hard and not really seeing my children, and I had an appraisal done at work which talked about what a great person I was to work with, and how I was always really energetic and enthusiastic and creative, and I showed my husband, and he said, yeah, that's great, who's that woman? I don't know who that is. And I needed to get some balance back. I needed to be as good a person at home as I was at work. So I quit, and I took a 2-year career break, and I thought, what can I do to earn money to pay the mortgage? And the only thing I knew how to do was write. And so I started writing for magazines and newspapers and businesses. I did copywriting, which pays a lot better than journalism. And I wrote social media copy and all sorts of things. And then I wrote I Let You Go, which was my debut. And then I've had a lot of luck. I Let You Go sold 1 million copies in 40 countries, and I've been a full-time novelist ever since.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's very similar to many of the writers. Many of the writers are actually accidental writers. I was listening to an interview of Lee Child the other day, and he said that he lost his job in the television industry, and that's what prompted him to experiment with writing. And he's one of my favorite writers now. So so great. Can I come to Bilal? How are you doing, Bilal, in Mumbai?
I'm good, sir. Yes, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. And you've been quiet for a while. I mean, Phoenix came, I think, about what, 2 or 3 years ago. And when was that?
Came last year actually, but here's the thing.
Okay.
That was it was a spy novel against the backdrop of bioterrorism, and it was written at a point where there was no virus on the horizon, and except it was scheduled for the month coronavirus hit, by the way, the release, and then the press is shut, and then it just got delayed by 7-8 months. And, it looked like it was written in retrospect, but that's not true at all. Having said that,
sorry,
like Claire, even I'm no clairvoyant, so I didn't predict any of that. It was just a coincidence. But you know, once the lockdown set into India, a lot of things just went on pause. But having said that, a lot of platforms, I mean, streaming platforms started opening up and developing shows. They didn't get to shoot, but a lot of things went into writing, into development. And because I dabble in screenwriting a bit, I worked on a few shows. And the sad part of screenwriting and writing for television or film is that more often than not, things collapse. And both the things I worked on during that last lockdown last year, it just kind of collapsed because of different reasons. So I've been quiet, yes, but now I'm thinking of getting back to writing a book soon. And hopefully.
Okay, this novel writing versus screenplay writing is a very interesting zone, and I'm going to explore this along with the other panelists as well as we go along, because I've also dabbled in both. But I want to ask you, your second last book before Phoenix, which is Bard of Blood, that was converted into a Netflix series, and we all watched it, and the whole nation loved it. So, what kind of pressure that has put on you as far as writing novels of that category and converting them? And also an additional question, Phoenix, has that already been accepted by anybody? Is it being adapted into a series or a film?
So to answer your first part, actually, so when I wrote Bard of Blood, the book, I think I was 19 or 20 at that point, and it was something that was just like an escapist spy thriller. I never imagined it would get published, much less turn into a series on Netflix. So obviously it was pressurizing and stuff like that, but I don't really carry that around with me because, you know, it's fine. You just have to like write a story that you enjoy, and eventually if you enjoy it, people who read it know that it's written in its purest way, and they kind of like it themselves. So even if they don't, I don't hold that against them. I get why they don't like certain things. So I don't carry the pressure around of trying to match the first book that became a show, because then you're just setting yourself up for failure, I would think. As for the second part of your question, it's one of the things that fell apart last year. So someone did take the rights, but it didn't work out last moment. So they've come back to me, and hopefully I'm in talks with someone else now. So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Again, it's just one of those things, you know. Just
let's hope it works. Mr. Dahl, you live in such a scenic and beautiful part of the world. I just want to ask you this question, and I know you a lot of people might have been asking you, but everybody wants to know why is crime as a genre so popular in such a peaceful place?
It's a difficult question, but I heard it many people has asked it. I have to speak for myself, and I think I don't write to reflect a crime rate or anything. I try to compose a story like a mystery and maybe a whodunit, because I'm interested in the characters and how the characters relate to each other, and how the characters relate to the society, and how they relate to crime. Because in that way, if I have a purpose, I think I try, when I write the book, I try to understand why crime is committed. And I think the main difference between the traditional whodunit and the Nordic noir is that the society is more involved in the plot. Like my latest book, The Assistants, is a historical novel, and it takes place between the two great wars, the First and Second World War, and things like, prohibition and depression and redundancy is important for the plot to evolve. And so what I try to do is more like to write something that could happen, not actually has happened. Even though I also write some true crime stories, because we also have crime in our country, and it's important to understand and why crime is committed. And but in this the fiction, I think the main purpose is to intrigue the readers, to make the readers forget about today's society and go into the universe in the novel.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks. And Mr. Dahl, I want to ask you another question, and that's about your screenwriting experience. So I believe you've written 2 screenplays for short film, and one of them you've collaborated with a Kurdish descent writer who's a citizen of your country, and I read fantastic reviews of that particular movie. So many awards. So how has been that experience? We briefly we were trying to discuss that, and we will discuss more with Bilal also about screenplay writing experience. But how's been your experience, screenplay versus novel?
In screenplay, it's only dialogue, and you have to state time and the place, and much of the work is to the director. The director is casting, is choosing locations. So the story is not mine when I write the screenplay, and it's also always a collaboration, and because when the editing takes place, the story alters around again and again. So the difference is when you write a novel, you have the complete control yourself. You create the locations, you create the characters, you decide everything, and you are the king. But in screenplay, you have a minor role because there's so many other people in the process of making the movie.
Yeah, thanks. I think you put it very nicely. That is, as a writer, you are a king as a novelist, but you're just a small, probably a component to the screenplay writing. I've had that experience of writing a screenplay, and that can be very very discouraging at times, because stories keep changing, not just in the collaborative process, but even when the movie is made and the character comes and he says, "I'm not going to speak this dialogue," or "I don't want this scene." This cannot happen with novels. We're lucky, our characters will never leap out and say that, "Don't make me say this."
Yes, but I've been very lucky because I'm working very close to this director, and we have been friends for many years. So we share the same, and we discuss everything, how the people looks like and everything. But as it is, like you say, when it comes to the set, the screenwriter has nothing to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Clare, I want to ask you something very interesting that I came across. You'd mentioned in one of your interviews that writing a good novel, crime novel, is like performing a magic trick. Now, as a writer, and I've been teaching creative writing for the last few years at a college here in Delhi, and I found this very intriguing, writing and magic trick, crime writing and magic tricks. So can you just elaborate on this?
Yeah, I can, and I'll just, before I explain that, I'll just throw something else into the mix as well.
Sure.
But it's also like it's like telling a joke. That's the other comparison that I often make. And the three things, a crime novel, a magic trick, and a joke should have nothing in common with each other, but actually it's all about timing and it's all about misdirection. And when you're doing a good magic trick, everything is there for you. That there should be nothing hidden. There shouldn't be any tricks. There shouldn't be any coins with, two heads, or boxes with disappearing doors in them. What you want from a good magician is a trick. You want something that you don't see. So you're telling the audience to look this way when actually what's really happening is down here. And it's the same when you're telling a joke. The punchline actually is sort of there all the time. You just don't really see it until the timing, and it comes in at the end. So what you want from the reader or the audience is that feeling that, I knew it was that person. I knew that was going to happen. But at the same time, I'm completely blown away and surprised by it. And that's why I think that the two things are very similar.
Mm-hmm. No, excellent. I think very, very interesting take. I think our audience is going to.
I'm interested to know whether that makes sense to Kjell and Bilal, actually, or whether I've blown their minds now.
Bilal, with you, what do you think? Joke and trick and crime writing.
It's a very interesting comparison, a joke in a crime story. But in its essence, all of us here may follow it to varying degrees, because when you're writing a crime thriller and it's fiction or any kind of fiction book, at least I would like to know what the end is before I start writing it. So then everything I do builds up to that end, which in many ways is the punchline, like you said. So if you know what your end is and you know how the story is going to culminate, at least the plot, then you can have your characters move towards that direction, So I hope that makes sense. But
no, it does. It does. A lot of people have the ending in mind. A lot of people don't. So,
well, I wonder if, because these guys are both screenwriters, if that every screenwriter I've ever spoken to outlines, they know their ending, they know the shape, they know the 3-act structure, whereas with novelists they're split into two camps. Some novelists plan and know the story, and some don't. I'm kind of guessing then that both Kjell and Bilal plan. Is that right? Are you planning?
I like planning.
No.
Planner, how do you do it then, Kjell?
Me? I'm making the book when I write it. I use a lot of time, and I have to search new directions. I have to try this, try that, and is it working or not? No. So, but I have planned, but I went away from that way of working because I didn't feel the tension. I mean the closeness to the story when I was planning in beforehand. So that's why I make it on the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it leads to the larger question of plot versus character, but actually that's sometimes not a question at all, because as long as you have strong characters, they guide you through to the end anyway. So, but having said that, just so I feel organized and I know what I'm sitting down to write for the day, I like to have an ending vaguely, even if it's just a vague idea of where it's going to end, because I know that draws me towards writing only what's necessary, and I don't end up, putting down pages of stuff that may or may not work.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I kind of look at it a bit like if I'm going on a journey, that I sort of need to know where I'm going, even if I don't follow directions, even if I go, get a bit lost, or I change my mind, or I stop off for a few hours, but I do need to be heading in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Okay, while we are on the plot, Claire, may I ask about Hostage? The kind of reviews that I've read, I mean, it's the first book that I need to read after this session. Right, it's so amazing. Whatever the blurb is so amazing. The reviews are fantastic. Tell me, did you have this plot in mind about this woman character who's having a rough marriage? And why don't you tell us about The Hostage? How did you plan this?
Well, Hostage is a locked room thriller that takes place on a 20-hour long haul flight from London to Sydney, and it's a contemporary spin on a classic trope, which is a cast of characters in a place they can't leave. It's sort of Murder on the Orient Express meets Con Air, I guess. And I've always wanted to write a locked room thriller. And I say thriller rather than mystery, because although I like the whodunit aspect of a locked room mystery, actually I like the high octane tension of a thriller. And I heard about this flight, the longest flight ever, which is 20 hours. And I thought that is a great setting for a thriller. And so what we have at the start of the book is a flight attendant with her own issues, as you say, her marriage, her parenting, all the baggage that comes with everyday life. And she's presented with an ultimatum. Does she keep her family safe, but potentially sacrifice everyone on the plane, or does she do what someone on the plane wants her to do and sacrifice her family? So it's a moral dilemma, and she's got 20 hours to make that decision and try and keep the right people safe.
Fabulous. Do you see that as a movie as well? Any of your books earlier, if I may ask, and pardon me for asking this, have your books been adapted into movies?
No, I find that the whole screen process so frustrating that actually last year I just made a decision that mentally I was going to forget about it, because every time one of my books is optioned, I remember the first time when I Let You Go was optioned, I practically went out and bought a dress for the red carpet. I was so ready for that premiere, and then of course it goes on and on and on, and it just takes forever. And like Kjell says, you're just a small part, so you don't have the control over it. So now I just think if my books are optioned, that's great. I take the money, I get on with writing my books, and everything else is gravy. So I haven't had anything in production yet. I've got a couple of things in development. I've done some screenwriting for I Let You Go, which I really enjoy. Very much see them as two separate projects. So I'm not one of these writers who's very precious about their books. I like the idea that you take the kernel of the idea and you put the book to one side and you write it as a new project, because it's a completely different medium. So I find it very interesting and exciting. And if Hollywood want to give me a call about Hostage, then, I'm ready.
That's a good one. Mr. Dahl, I want to ask you about the series that you've written, series of novels with the same character, and you've also written some standalone novels. What are the challenges in writing a series? Because I've got a series of my own espionage novel. I wanted to write 3. I wrote 2 and I got tired, and it's been 8 years that I've not written the third one. I think carrying story of the same characters forward for me, it's been very hard. You've dabbled in both. So what are the challenges? And also I want to ask you, has your series been optioned, or is there a movie made, or anything like that?
No, to me, it's like Claire. I have sold some options on books, but it took a long time and nothing happened. So I took the money and I'm happy with that. When I write series, it's the protagonist is there from beforehand. That's the problem with writing in series. So what I do is that I'm writing about a couple of people in the police force. And I used to, when I write a new novel in the series, I take one of them and give him or she the role of the protagonist, because then I can get to know this character better on the way. And one other thing is that I also like to explore Oslo, the city, because this series is called the Oslo Detective Series, and this city is developing at all time, and it's evolving, and so much things are happening, so many areas are built out and new areas pop up. So I like to use the city as a character in the book. So I focus on new characters and the city, and the plot evolves out of that. And writing standalones give me more freedom, because then nothing is set on beforehand, and I'm totally free. And I find that very refreshing, very inspirational to do that. So in many ways, I think writing a series is harder, because you're tied up in a way when you do it.
Great. Mr. Bilal, I want to ask you that you mentioned in many of your interviews that you're very grateful to your mentor, and you're very lucky to have a mentor like Mr. Hussain Zaidi, who's one of India's best-selling true crime novelists, and almost every book that he writes gets converted into a movie or a series, and all of them are blockbuster hits. How important do you think at your stage of career with 4 books, how important is it to have a writer for a young writer, as a mentor for a young writer?
So, the strange thing about my journey with Mr. Hussain Zaidi is that when I was studying journalism in college, he had come there as a guest lecturer to teach us just for a couple of sessions. And towards the end of those sessions, he wanted to put together a research team, which he could, hand out the transcribing work and stuff like that, and just come along for interviews and take down notes and stuff. And I was dying to do that because I was a big fan of all his books. And he works as a novelist, as a true crime writer, and as a journalist all at the same time. And I don't know how he does that. But I was a big fan of his work, and I was lucky enough to be part of that team of, I think, 20 people who applied, 20 college students, like we were all 18, 19 and stuff. And I think it was during that phase when he identified a phase of me assisting him, when he identified that I could write a bit, and he groomed me, taught me a few techniques, helped me with research on my first novel, because at that point, obviously, I wasn't going to be taken as seriously by any publisher, because if you're a 19-year-old writing about hard espionage between India, Pakistan, Balochistan, Afghanistan, you might not make the cut immediately. But it was him who guided me through with the research and helped me shape the story. And then, every time I thought of giving up, he kind of put me back on track. So I think it's extremely important to have a mentor or someone who encourages you. And it's always a bonus if that someone knows the craft themselves, be it in music, be it in acting, be it in singing, be it in anything, just carpentry for all that matters. But if there's someone who helps you and guides you through, there's no bigger gift than that. And I've been fortunate in that sense, to have him on my side.
I hope Hussain Zaidi is listening to this. Mr.
I'll make sure he does.
Okay. Mr. Dahl, did you have a mentor in your initial stages of writing? And Ms. Clare, if you can answer after that about if you also had a mentor.
No, my mentor is my editor. I mean, that system is in Norway. The publishing houses have editors, and I trust him, and we are mates. And yes, it's the best reader I can have. Yeah.
Okay. Claire?
I don't have a formal mentor. When I was starting out, I have had advice from a lot of different authors, and I'm always really grateful that people take the time to read things or to talk to me about the industry. And now I'm in a position where I can pay it forward a bit. So I make a point of when I'm reading advanced copies of books, I will always prioritize debuts, new voices, unrepresented voices. Earlier this year, I gave a scholarship to a creative writing course for a young Black writer who I'm now mentoring for a year, because I'm really passionate about diverse voices in publishing, which is still very, very white, very middle class. And so I'm doing what I can to amplify those voices. So I think mentoring, coaching is really, really important in our business.
Wonderful. Can we give a round of applause to Claire for this?
That's a great initiative.
Why did you start that, and how's been that journey? If you can briefly tell us.
So I've stepped away from that now for a number of years, and the woman who runs it, the team who run it, are doing an incredible job. I started it because I was bored, and I'm not very good at not having a team. I needed a project, I needed budgets, I needed a team to run, and a bit of a headache. And so and also because I saw there was an opportunity there that actually it was a great town that could sustain a literary festival. So I started it and ran it for a few years, and it taught me a great deal about the industry, about how not every great writer is a great performer, a great speaker, that actually you need to find the right people to entertain at literary festivals. Otherwise they can be very dry and very boring. I learned a lot about what makes a good event, and that's been very useful to me now that I'm on the other side of the table and I'm dealing with event organizers and booksellers, and it helped me, you know, make a lot of connections in the industry, which were really important. But most of all, it was just huge fun, bringing books to readers and introducing them to new voices, and I loved it.
Wonderful. Mr. Dahl, you've been to India once, is that right? During Times Lit Fest a couple of years ago? Or more than
Two times.
Okay.
India is so beautiful, and I hope this pandemic will make us be able to travel again. I met Clare in Kolkata at the Times Literary Festival, and I was in Delhi, and I love to travel around, and yes, I think I hope I will be invited to India again. Yes.
Of course, yes. So I want to ask you about your favorite writer. Do you have an Indian favorite writer at all, or any other writer outside the Nordic region?
Oh yes, I read a lot of India. I mean, Vikram Seth, Arundhati Roy, and Salman Rushdie, if he counts. And
any thriller writers?
Yes, I have met Vishta Mia. I don't know how do you pronounce.
Oh, he's a good friend. He lives in London. He's very good friend of mine. And he's very popular during the Times Lit Fest everywhere.
Yes, I read
that he goes. He's a performer.
Yeah. I read a couple of his books. I like them, and one called Abir Mukherjee or something, writes historical crime fiction from Kolkata.
Mukherjee.
Yeah.
Abir Mukherjee. Yes.
I didn't know how to pronounce it. Okay. I like it very much, but so because I'm reading everything. I just love reading, and I have no preferences. I mean, crime or no crime or ordinary fiction or what you call it. But my number one favorite is John le Carré. I think he's very good.
Yes. What do you say, Bilal?
Oh, I love Mr. le Carré too. So, although there's a writer that I really look up to, and he writes contemporary spy fiction. His name is Daniel Silva.
Oh yes, everybody knows about him.
And he's written a lot of great spy novels of late, and all of them he churns them out. There's one every year, and all of them are outstanding, and they're great pieces of prose too. It's not just like, you know, commercial book written to make it in time for release. So I really enjoy his books, and it's also topical. So
one of the things I want to ask you, Claire, is that one of the things is that writers generally need very lonely kind of lives. You know, they shy away from social media, not just entertainment during the Lit Fest, but otherwise also they kind of secluded from the society. But you've been an exception because you're big on social media, I saw, and you believe in author interactions. So tell us, has it really helped, this networking thing?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. It's not just author networking. I like talking to my readers. I like being engaged with them and making it a two-way conversation, which wouldn't have been possible 30 years ago. You know, it was very much a one-way conversation, the reader, the author talking to the reader. And I love the fact that we get to listen to our readers now and answer questions. So I'm very, very present on social media, too present probably, given my deadlines. I do a lot of chatting on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I joined TikTok a month ago. So I'm spending time on TikTok. But I think it's really important. It's important because that's where readers are. And so it helps to have an understanding of what their cultural influences are and how they're engaging with other authors, even if you choose not to do it yourself. And the author networking is really important. So I get to meet other authors from, you know, different countries to hear about their work, to support them so that I can perhaps say I've got a big platform in the UK, but maybe I don't have a big platform in another country. Well, actually, I can work with other authors to share their work in the UK, and they can share my work in their country. So it's a really useful thing, I think. And it means I don't have to write. So that's good too.
Okay. Bilal, you are exactly the opposite. I don't see you anywhere in social media. You are exactly opposite of this. So do you agree with that?
I'm present on social media. I mean, I'm quite
very quiet. You don't interact. You don't. I don't know what you do if you're there.
Yeah, I only interact when I find it necessary, I guess. I mean, it's more. I'm just scared of interactions in general. You know, it's not
scared of interactions.
Yeah, I mean, just if you can avoid it, avoid it. You know?
I think you're far too wise for your age.
No, that's right.
How old are you, if you may know?
Oh, I'm
19. You are now
27. Yeah, just
27. And whenever you share your pictures on Twitter, once in a while, when I watch your, I mean, when I see your pictures, I always think that this is an actor trying to pose. Anybody who's offered you roles, you're in Bombay and you are, one leg in the film industry.
Not yet. I've not been offered anything, and I don't think I'll be able to do that either. So I'm just happy writing. You know?
I don't know if Mr. Dahl and Clare can agree, then we can pool some money and produce a movie with Bilal.
This is when the internet connection gets weak, and then
yeah, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Okay, Mr. Dahl, what are your?
But just an aside, Kulpreet himself has acted in a few short films, and he's writing a lot. So he is an actor as well. So
I'm an accidental actor, but today is not about me. So we'll keep that for some time. I just started acting from last year, and it's interesting. Mr. Dahl, what's your opinion about social media? How good has it been for you to reach out to readers?
I think Clare is better than me, because I like Instagram. I can, but Twitter, I have not learned how to handle Twitter. Like now, I'm writing a new novel, and I'm hard working on it, and I cannot find anything to write on Twitter, because there I'm just an audience, and but in Facebook I've been for many years, so there I can do some advertising for my books and interact a little bit. But I'm a little shy, so I find it difficult to try to sell myself on social media all the time. So I'm maybe a little bit too old-fashioned. But I was interesting to listen to Clare, because I think she's right. I think to learn to know how your readers function in social media is important. So I will go to TikTok, but being an audience.
and you know what? Me and Bilal cannot be on TikTok because TikTok has been banned from India. It's a Chinese app and it's a political thing. So there's no TikTok in India. So I'm sorry, when you come on TikTok, Mr. Dahl will not be able to follow you. And so goes with you, Clare.
I'm sorry.
No,
also, the thing about social media is that sometimes you just want to put out an opinion, and the ones that counter it are so aggressive, and it's just better off ignored, So you just don't get yourself into that cycle of anxiety and it's a faceless, nameless person. It's just an egg who's abusing you. So what's the point? You spend like one.
It can be a horrible place. I tell you what I find incredibly useful about social media is when I need to do some research. Maybe I need to find a contact. Does anyone know anyone who's ever worked in, pathology in the 1950s? Someone will find the answer for you on Twitter, and that's really helpful. Or knowing whether a cultural reference that you might make in a book set in the UK, is that something that other people are going to understand? So actually, from a work point of view, I think it's quite useful too.
Absolutely. Yeah, even in networking with people as yourselves, that's a great thing to be on. But then there's always that one rotten apple who spoils the day. So it's just...
So I think we've spent about 42, 43 minutes. So we're coming almost to an end of a session. It was absolutely lovely. But I would like to invite you for your final thoughts, starting with you, Mr. Dahl.
My final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts about anything that you might like to say, because our audience is predominantly Indian. And this festival has been there for a while and got a very big following. So people perhaps... would like to know more about you in case something that I've not asked and you would like to highlight now. So you can just share your comments for the audience.
So I'm always surprised that a novel written in Norway, a small country way up north with this little language, can appeal to people on the other side of the earth. So I'm very happy when I have had some mails from, not many, but from a couple of Indian writers, and I'm so pleased. And I think it's that's hope for literature, because literature is losing against TV series and against movies. And when I'm on the plane, I'm maybe sometimes the only one that's reading a book. So it gives me hope that that people read and they respond to the writer. And I'm very grateful for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Claire, please.
It's amazing to be here. As Bilal said at the start, hopefully next time we'll do it in person. But for now, what I'm loving about this is that there are people watching this who perhaps wouldn't have been able to have come to an in-person literature festival. And so that's super important. If you've not come across me or my books before, the question that people always ask is whether they can read my books in any order. They're not a series. You can absolutely pick up any one at all. I Let You Go is my first one. Hostage is the most recent, but you can pick up any one and hopefully enjoy it. And if you do, then come and find me on social media, where I will almost certainly be wasting too much time chatting about my goat and my sheep and anyone. Say hello.
Wonderful. Bilal.
Okay, I'm not as accomplished as the rest of you guys, but I think I can just speak out of experience and tell anyone who's willing to get into writing, be it screenwriting, writing novels, writing of any form. All I want to say is that if you get into it for the money, for anything that's not the passion of writing itself, you are setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. And it's just something to get ahead in this profession. You have to be passionate about it and really love it. And even if you aren't too good at it, at least you need to love it to the point that you know it's the only thing you can do. So I hope that makes sense in whatever way. But
it does. Passion is important, in anything that you do, including writing. Great. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure interacting with you, Mr. Dahl, Claire, and Mr. Bilal. Thank you very much, and hope you had a good time. Yeah, and hope to meet you in person soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.